Welcome to the Collecting the Past podcast. Funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities and in partnership with the Flannery O'Connor Institute for the Humanities, this project paired students from Georgia College with community members to collect oral histories from individuals who either lived in Milledgeville during the heart of O'Connor's writing career or whose lives were shaped by events that took place during this period. Our goals with the project are to expand the existing historical narrative of our town by documenting unwritten life stories and creating a public digital archive. As you'll hear, the students had fun creating their own podcasts in the style of their choice. Like our narrators, each episode has its own personality.
Where were you born originally?
I was born in Macon, Georgia, on Mulberry Street, Bibb County.
Okay. And what made you come to Milledgeville?
What made me come to Milledgeville?
Yes, ma'am.
My husband was a recent graduate of dental school, and he was looking for a practice. We wanted a place where we could raise children. He was from Miami. We did not want to raise our children in the big city.
Mm-hmm.
So he had passed the dental board, and they had openings at the state hospital at that time, in the dental clinic there. So he applied, and we lived on the hospital grounds, and he worked as a dentist there for 15 months. And then we decided Milledgeville was a fantastic town, weather, people, a great place to raise children. And so we decided that we would set up practice in Milledgeville.
Well, that's great.
I practiced 35 years.
For 35 years?
Yeah.
Wow. So, we were talking on the phone a little bit, but I saw your interview on the news about volunteering at the hospital, the cancer hospital, for over 60 years. What's been your most interesting or favorite story while volunteering?
My most interesting story, and I guess one that you're talking about for the hospital?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I had surgery in, forgot what year it was now, but anyway, I had surgery and I was in the hospital as a patient. And the nurse who happened to be the head nurse was Miss Pitts. And Miss Pitts and I were great friends because I had volunteered at the hospital as a recovered cancer patient.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had gone to different patients over the years, and Miss Pitts and I knew each other well enough that we were comfortable asking one another whatever questions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she came to me one day when I was a patient, and she said, "Miss Meldra, I've never asked you to do a job when you were sick." And she said, "You are feeling good now. I have a patient across the hall from you who has just had breast cancer surgery, and she is frightened, a little weary,
Mm-hmm.
and she's not too sure how things are going to go. she said, "Do you feel well enough to go across the hall and talk to her?" So I took my little Ivy and went across the road, across there, and talked to the patient. And that patient recovered from breast cancer, lived 25 or so years.
Wow.
And we were always good friends. But I volunteered in 1974 at the hospital, and I still volunteer at the hospital in a different capacity.
And that's still ongoing, or
I beg your pardon?
you still volunteer?
Yes,
Yeah.
but I'm with Harriet's Closet,
Mhm.
which is a cancer gift part of the hospital. We give gifts to cancer patients, no charge, for wigs or bras, or we loan equipment if they need equipment of any kind, other than beds. We don't do beds, but we do other equipment, wheelchairs, rollators, anything necessary like that.
Yeah. That's
And
right.
I've been doing that for eight years or more.
Wow. That's very inspiring.
Yeah.
Other than your work at the closet, what's your background with Milledgeville?
My background,
Yes, ma'am.
well, let me see. Other than raising my children, who I told you are both adopted,
Mm-hmm.
I guess I was active with school equipment, anything that the children were involved in school. I was part of that, PTA president, blah, blah, blah. Then when they all got through school, I was a volunteer for the dental program, the Georgia Dental Association, and traveled all over. And I guess and I've been a member of First Baptist Church since 1954, and I've always been active as Sunday school teacher, WMU leader. Then finally I volunteered to work as secretary at the church.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was a paid employee for 6 years. And my hand in just about everything that went on in Milledgeville in those days.
All right. Do you have any relation with Georgia College?
No, other than a stepson, son-in-law. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Son-in-law. And I have a nephew and a niece. My niece is at Georgia College. Dr. Martha Allen Dietrich. I don't know whether you all take math. She's math head, one of the heads of the math department.
Mm-hmm.
And her husband is at Georgia Military College, and he is in the math department. Maybe dean, was dean. I don't know whether he is now or not. can't keep up with all the things they do.
All right.
Other than that, I've never been a student at Georgia College.
Okay.
I've always, and my children, neither one went to Georgia College. My daughter and son went to Abraham Baldwin in South Georgia.
Okay. Earlier we were talking, and you said that you knew Flannery O'Connor.
Yeah.
How did you know her?
Oh, well, she was best friends to my across the street neighbor, and that's how I met her. And then her best friend moved out of town, and she frequently would come home to see her mother, and her mother and I were very good friends, and we would visit one another, but it was more casual than anything else.
Now, is this when she still had all the peacocks and stuff, or was that before?
Yeah,
Oh, really?
She was still out at the farm. She stayed in town with Regina and so forth on occasion, but most times she was out at there.
Do you have any fun stories with you and her?
No, no, we never did stay together that much because she was a young person. I was really an old lady because I was probably 40 years old. And I don't think she was probably more than, she had to have been in her maybe 20s.
So were you closer with Regina or with Flannery?
No.
No?
The only one I was really close to was Mrs. Florencourt, her aunt.
Okay.
And she and I grew old together, you might say. But other than that, I was not a social butterfly. I didn't play cards, and I didn't belong to organizations. So I did not belong to any writers group or anything like that. I didn't have time for that. I was too busy volunteering for the dental group or the children's things or whatever was going on.
Right. We heard earlier that you had a cotton farm or something like that.
Oh, no. My husband was one that he loved farming. And he loved Milledgeville. He loved the history of Milledgeville. And he decided that since we had a Confederate statue downtown, and there was a median between the library and across the road, and there was nothing out there but weeds. And so he went to the library and asked them why they didn't plant something in the median. Well, they hadn't thought about it. They had just built that library. So he said, this is a Confederate state. Why don't you have some cotton out there? And then when people come to town, they can, from out of town and from other countries, they can see cotton and what it looks like. So the library went to the powers that be and got permission, and we planted cotton. I can show you a book before you get ready to go. I'll show it to you. So we went out there and planted cotton. We did just the two of us, and then my nephew, who probably was 10 or 15 at that time. He thought it was pretty neat, so he got his finger in it. Well, we had that cotton patch out there, and it was the talk of the town because we had too many pros and too many cons. Some liked it, some didn't like it, but it was very enlightening to people that had never seen cotton before, and they didn't know any of the history, how long it took to grow, and what it looked like. I used to work after my husband passed away. I finished that year, 2 years, and it always made me feel good to know that we had contributed something to the community. The library would allow people to cut the cotton, and they had it in the library. We had school groups to come, and the teachers would show them the cotton as it progressed from plants to the finished product of the cotton. But I always felt like that was one of the greatest contributions that we could have made. People from other countries had never seen cotton, and it was just enlightening. There were some blacks that were offended because they thought we were demeaning them. But the majority of them, I will have to tell you how proud I was when black people would come by. We called them blacks then. They would come by and say, I remember picking cotton when I was little. And they were not offended at all. They felt like that we were letting passers-by know what cotton looked like.
What changes have you noticed in Milledgeville over the years?
When we first came here, the track was still in the middle of the town.
The railroad?
The train still went by. Then after they took that out, the state hospitals started going down. When we first moved to Milledgeville, we lived on the grounds as a dentist. We lived out there for 15 months, and I got a chance to I guess see both sides of the question. I always felt like the state hospital was like another city, because a lot of things that went on at the hospital, nobody in town knew anything about. In other words, they weren't interested in one another. It was a whole different entity and social level, I guess you'd say. But that was one thing. And then seeing the patients. At my church, we gave a Christmas party for the patients every year. And we had as many as 1,800 patients that we gave stockings to at Christmas time. And so I got to know some of the patients firsthand. And then it was a sad day when first one group and then another group were taken out and not there any longer. I feel like that we did the wrong thing taking the patients out of a central setting and distributing around the state, because I don't think the patients ever got the attention after they left a central location and were dispersed. I think too many of them became homeless.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that was a major mistake for the state, not just Milledgeville. Because we didn't really have anything to do with it. It was state.
Mm-hmm. Well, trying to focus on the mental asylum, have you ever met anybody who has like worked there?
Where, at the hospital?
In the insane asylum.
Oh, in the insane asylum. Oh, yes, I knew a number of them that were patients there. They were not insane, nor were they handicapped. A number of them that I knew were elderly people that could not take care of themselves anymore. That was before we had assisted living like you have now.
Mm-hmm.
And and one of my very dear friends' mother was there because she could not take care of herself anymore, and she was there. And when they couldn't take care of themselves, there was nowhere else. That was one of the things that I was glad to be on a board where we insisted that the powers that be in Milledgeville have nursing home. We only had one old nursing home then, very inadequate. And then no assisted livings at all. But we could see the handwriting on the wall that these people that were getting older were going to end up homeless or having no one to care for them. So I've been real pleased that we've got the assisted living places we do now, because I think that's what we've needed a long time. Is that what you asked?
No, that's a great answer. Thank you. What are some of the main industries that you think shaped?
Phil, I think as much as anything else. My husband being a dentist, we had 3 dentists in the Milledgeville, and the people that were here had to travel outside of Milledgeville. So it was great to see when the hospital came, doctors came. When doctors came, patients could visit their doctors in town instead of going out of town. Of course, now they think nothing about going out of town because everything is so specialized now that they didn't have before. But that's one thing that I think has helped. The fact that they vote and the Coca-Cola Company, of course, was always good. And the Coca-Cola Company people were energetic enough to participate in activities that were going on in Milledgeville that helped to encourage more social activities to bring others to Milledgeville. The country club, the golf, I think that did a lot of good. GMC, the building of Georgia Military College, going from just a college to prep school, and the way it has grown, I think that's fantastic. Has brought a lot of good, and people from other countries to Milledgeville. And of course the brickyard was always here at the beginning when we first came. I can't think of anything else offhand.
No, the answer you gave was very good. Thank you.
The medical field anyway
Yeah, that's right.
had certainly improved, and we still want to be sure that we have a good hospital, because if we don't have a hospital, Georgia College is not going to want to have students here, and it's part of life everywhere now.
Right. What was it like growing up in a more segregated South?
What was it like?
Mm-hmm.
Well, my grandmother had farms, and I was used to going with my grandmother on when they were checking the farms to find out whether they were doing what they were supposed to be doing in the way of crops and having enough food and whatnot. So I was used to that, and I was raised by sitter, I guess you'd call them. We called them nursemaids in those days. From the time I was just a little girl, because my mother worked, and that was the only way she had for somebody to take care of my brother and me. Then, as I grew up, I had friends that were African Americans. Then, when I lived in Miami, we didn't have the feeling between the non-Caucasians and the Caucasians. And then when I went to Detroit, when my husband was in dental school, we found out that they were not as, there's a word. We found out that the Northerners were not as feeling for the less fortunate than maybe we were. And I was really surprised. For instance, my husband in his dental class of 4 years in Detroit, he had one non-Caucasian young man. And when he was there, he was the only one that would ask the young man if he could take him to class that was out of town, if he would like to go with him, because no one else would correspond, would be as friendly. It was not friendly, but and that's just a simple instance. You don't have to put any of that in the book, but
Right.
just for your own information. We found out that everybody wasn't as friendly and as neighborly and as loving, if you want to call it that, caring. They weren't as caring about the less fortunate than we were.
Do you feel that Milledgeville, in some ways, is still segregated?
In some ways. Well, yes, but when I was a volunteer with the breast cancer program, I never had a problem with any of the black women that I visited. I never felt any different between them and me, just because of my color and her color. We're all human beings.
Right.
We're all little tiny things that grow up into caring people. Some care and some don't. But God is so good to all of us. How can you say that you're better than she is? You have different ideas about things. But to me, as long as people realize that the same God put all of us here, and he put us here for a reason, that's to love them.
Yes, ma'am. I agree with that as well.
And one of the stories that Sandra Worship and I did, she had a young man that I was talking about the geese and the ducks and the animals, and he came out here, and we had the best time together telling the stories, But it's just, I think if people will just stop and realize whether you're poor or whether you're not poor, there but for the grace of God go I. You got to think of other people before you think of yourself.
Yes, ma'am. How would you describe the atmosphere of Milledgeville?
The atmosphere.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I think the atmosphere is very obliging, and I think it is in part because of Georgia College, because we've got so many young people that come to Milledgeville and they stay for a little while. They find out that we are a caring community. When people's houses burn or they have a death in the family, they are usually right there trying to help people recover. I don't know whether you've noticed in the paper they've been talking about the tornado that we had last year, and some of the people who were hard hit, and they rebuilt their homes, helped rebuild their homes, and they don't ask for money to do it. They do it because they want to.
Mm-hmm. Do you know of any local legends in Milledgeville? Like, we had one person talk to us in our class say that there's tunnels that run underneath the governor's mansion or something like that.
Well, they have said that there were, and every time they get out there and work on sewers,
Mm-hmm.
and particularly up in the town there was supposed to be a tunnel from the governor's mansion to the GMC.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody has ever said that it was authentically so. And of course, the churches were in Government Square where the Episcopal Church is and the Presbyterian Church. We had the Methodist Church and the Baptist Church were all there. And I think that I have never heard anybody say anything about other than the fact of a tunnel between the two buildings. That's all. That's all that I know. And that's history. That the only history that I have heard about that.
What's your favorite place in Milledgeville?
My favorite place,
Yes, ma'am. Other than the hospital.
other than right here,
Yes, ma'am.
my favorite place, I guess, really would be my home. See, I've lived here 68 years, and I plan to be buried here. My cemetery is when you start down the road, that first curve of the fenced area, that's my cemetery. And both my husbands are buried there.
Mm.
And I plan to be buried there too. But I just love Milledgeville. There are some places that I guess I might think I like better, but I don't think I don't have any hanging out place, and no place that I really care that much about.
Yes, ma'am. Do you remember when Georgia College went from an all-women's school to a co-ed school?
Yeah.
What was the stigma around Milledgeville, like, about it?
It wasn't a stigma because it was all women's. I think now it went through a number of years when it wasn't anything but women's college.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the college system, state system, realized that they were not getting anywhere with just women. They needed more funds, and having co-ed would do that. But I don't think I won't say it. I didn't see anything wrong with it being all women at that time, but I could see that it was not going to grow to 10,000 students with just women.
Do you have a favorite restaurant in Milledgeville?
Let me think a minute. Longhorn was, but there are too many now for me to say that I have a favorite.
Yeah.
I like the fast food, McAllister's. I like Pickle Barrel,
Yeah, they're good.
and let me see. I don't drink, so I don't have any of this outside social activities that a lot of people do, and that's why you need to talk to somebody that's more. Well, Sandra will know who they are, but anyway, tell her that I haven't changed a bit. I'm still just as country as I ever was.
Well, earlier today she said she still loves you.
Well, I just love her too. I know that a lot of people don't always feel the same way, but you know, God made her, God made me. I knew her mom and dad, loved both of them. Her sister, you know, there's so many people that I have come across in all these years I've been here that I miss.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'll always miss them because I learned a lot from old folks.
Mm.
And the main thing is I found out we're not all perfect, even though we think we are.
Right.
I sure don't know all the answers.
But does anybody?
No.
Yes, ma'am. When you turned 100, did you do anything, any special?
Yeah, my daughter insisted that I have a party, and we had a party down at the river, and I think we had more people than we needed to have. I'll tell you somebody that really impressed me with their history, and Sandra will know her. She's deceased, but Betty and Milton Snyder. Betty was a person that she was an artist. She knew many of the art genres around the state. And I think she made an impression on me, probably as my Sunday school teacher too, because she loved history. She could tell you things. Now you're talking about somebody that could tell you about Milledgeville and Ollie. Fantastic, she could do that. But she passed away 5 years ago, I think it is. And none of her family is still here.
What's your favorite time of the year in Milledgeville?
My favorite time,
Yes, ma'am.
springtime.
Spring? So right about now?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, because I love to be out in the yard. I love the change of the season from gloomy, dreary
Mm-hmm.
to life.
Yeah, all cold.
Seeing life, baby goats,
Yeah.
chickens, and all that other good stuff. That's about it.
How did COVID-19 affect you and Milledgeville?
How did the back? Oh, we lost a lot of friends. I think that too many people took it casually at first, and then they went the other way around, and they became paranoid. But other than that, I believe that our doctors were trying to be on top of everything and educate people to being cautious, having the shots and whatnot. I've had all mine.
All right.
But I did have COVID too.
Oh, really?
But I didn't have COVID until my sister-in-law brought it from Florida. And I did not know that she had COVID until after she left here. She stayed with me for a week. And then when I found out that that's where I got it from, I was not happy, but nevertheless, I think everybody has to be cautious when it comes to something like COVID.
We hope you enjoyed learning more about the people and historical events connected to Milledgeville and Flannery O'Connor in this episode. If you or someone you know has stories to share related to either of these topics, we'd love to hear them. In addition to documenting community memories, you'll also help us preserve your story for future generations. Visit our website, collectingthepastmilledgeville.wordpress.com, to learn more.